Welcome to Victor Narrates Reddit. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's begin. My wife assured me that spending a month with her ex was an act of compassion. Our daughter backed her up. I distanced myself, and in the end, they lost everything. We've been married for 21 years. I'm 42. She's 40. We met at a gathering organized by a mutual friend. From the first moment, her personality caught my attention. Sharp, sarcastic, with an ability to silence everyone with just one well-aimed sentence. I like that about her. I still do, when it's not directed at me. We started with very little, young, and without a clear path. Soon after, our daughter Martina was born, who is now 19, and we built everything from scratch. We never had a perfect life, but it was stable. I worked eternal hours while she took care of the home. Over time, she resumed her studies part-time and then began working from home as a wellness coach. As the years went by, we started to drift apart. I became more practical. She, as she now says, became more aligned with her higher self. The tone of her voice began to change. Her patience wore thin. Suddenly, any comment from me was received as a criticism. And Martina started taking her side in everything, like her personal cheerleader. This happened a few months ago. I came home from work and sat in the kitchen to eat some leftovers. While I was eating, my wife, Laura, was pacing around the house with that nervous energy I know so well. The way she walks when she's about to tell me something I won't like. Finally, she sat down in front of me with complete calm and dropped it. Esteban asked me to come stay with him for a while. He's going through a tough time. Esteban, her ex. He wasn't a husband or anything formal, just an old boyfriend from her youth. The kind you only hear about vaguely, always accompanied by the comment, he was a disaster. I sat there in silence, my fork frozen in mid-air, trying to process what she had just said. She continued talking with the casualness of someone reading a menu. It will only be 30 days. His wife passed away, and he's having a difficult time grieving. I feel like I need to help him close that chapter. I put my plate down on the table and leaned forward. You're going to go live with your ex-boyfriend for a month while you're still married to me? Laura tilted her head and looked at me as if I were overreacting. It's not like that. It's not about a relationship. I just want to support him. He's suffering. I blinked, incredulous. Of course, because the best way to handle grief is with shared coffees and morning routines. She crossed her arms. Don't be cruel. He lost someone. And I'm about to lose someone too, I replied. Since when have you two been talking again? For a while. Off and on. It's not like I hid it from you. You didn't mention it once until today, right when you've already decided on the date you're moving out. I didn't have time to finish the sentence because Martina appeared from the hallway. Perfect. She hadn't heard everything, but that had never stopped her before. She's not your property, Dad, she said defiantly. You can't control who she talks to or where she goes. She can help someone if she decides to. Excuse me, I said. Am I your ex-stepfather now and not your father? Martina huffed as if preparing for a motivational speech. You always make everything about you. This isn't about you. It's Mom doing something good for someone who needs it. Martina, she's talking about going to live with her ex for a month. Laura intervened. I'm not going to share a bed with him, if that's what you're thinking. But you'll share a house, I retorted. Martina shrugged. You're exaggerating. It's not like they're going on a honeymoon. And I'm here paying for everything, feeling replaced, I said. Laura raised her voice slightly. This is why I didn't tell you sooner. I knew you would react like this. You didn't tell me sooner because you knew it sounded absurd and you thought if you just dropped it casually, I'd accept it without a fuss. Martina rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. You're being ridiculous. Do you think everything revolves around your opinion? She's doing something good, and you're burning up because it's not with you. Do you hear yourselves? I asked them. Seriously, you're justifying Mom going to live with her ex, and I'm the irrational one? You're twisting things, Laura said. I just repeated your words, that you're going to be with Esteban for 30 days to support him. How do you expect me to interpret that? We'll have boundaries, she replied, arms still crossed. Yes, like the ones a hotel or a simple phone call would have provided. But instead, You're packing a suitcase and disappearing into another man's kitchen." She said nothing. Martina then added, in a loaded tone, "You're acting like she's abandoning you. She's just being a good person, but your ego can't handle it. She is abandoning me. I'm her husband. We live together. And she's choosing to stay somewhere else with someone she had a past relationship with. What do you want me to call it?" They both sat there, calm, as if they were the voices of reason in all this, as if I were the deranged one for finding this completely unacceptable. I didn't argue anymore. I stood up, went to the counter, grabbed my laptop, and sat back down at the table. Laura watched me as if she expected me to look for an online therapist. Instead, I opened my email and drafted a message. Subject: clarification regarding separation. Just one clear, direct paragraph. As discussed today, you have decided to reside outside of our shared home for the next 30 days. During this time, all financial responsibilities, services, accounts, and expenses will be separated, including fuel, groceries, streaming services, subscriptions, gym memberships, and Martina's school costs. Please confirm for the record. No emotion, no exclamation points, just facts. I sent it and CC'd myself. I waited. Laura let out a dry laugh. Seriously? An email? You want to act like adults? Then you have to play by the rules. I'm not going to support two households. You made a decision. I'm just formalizing it in writing. She took out her phone, typed for a few seconds, and said, "Happy." A second later, I heard the sound of a new email in my inbox. A one-word reply. Confirmed. Martina, still standing as if posing for an empowerment campaign, applauded. "Very good, Mom. Clear boundaries." I turned to her. "Perfect. Then your university card is frozen as of tomorrow. Clear boundaries for everyone." The applause stopped instantly. Laura looked at me with a half-smile and shrugged. "It doesn't matter. I'll be back before you even notice I'm gone." I looked her directly in the eyes and said, "I'm not going to miss anyone." And I meant it. The next morning, Laura packed a small suitcase and left as if she were heading to a spiritual retreat. Martina, with calculated enthusiasm, helped her carry her things to the car. Not a single tear, not a moment of doubt from either of them. And honestly, that hurt more than I would have imagined. I felt like I was just the guy who pays the bills and fixes what's broken. When they pulled out of the garage, they didn't even look back. They left as if I owed them something. No, the other way around. I stood in the driveway for several minutes, processing the dense silence their departure left behind. I went back into the kitchen and saw Laura's plate still in the sink, remnants of the breakfast we shared before she left. I glanced towards Martina's room. The door was open, lights on, as if they had escaped their responsibilities under the guise of a 30-day trial, without thinking about the consequences. It was in that moment that I understood what they thought, that I was the constant, the safety net, the guy who would still be there, waiting with open arms when they decided to return, as if it had all been some enlightening experience. No, this time, I waited a day before making any major decisions. Not out of anger, but for clarity. The first 24 hours were strangely quiet. Too quiet, even as if the house itself didn't know if it was okay to breathe without their voices echoing off the walls. I went to work the next day, as if nothing had happened. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to invite questions. My plan was simple: handle everything quietly. But I wasn't avoiding reality. I was preparing the ground. Because when you live with people who take you for granted and then leave, believing you'll stay in the same spot, there's something very liberating in realizing you don't have to. As soon as I got home, I sat down with a notebook and began to list every subscription, account, and shared expense that came out of my pocket. The list was longer than I expected. Music, grocery deliveries, Amazon Prime, even that astrology app Laura said kept her centered. Everything canceled. Silently, without warnings, without messages. I just did it. Then I checked our shared cloud account. Laura had been uploading photos from Esteban's house. Nothing out of place, selfies on the porch, pictures of his dog, green smoothies, but it made me uncomfortable. Not because I thought something was happening between them yet, but because she looked too peaceful while I was picking up the pieces they left behind. So I continued. I went into the family budget app, the one I set up because neither of them tracked expenses, and removed them from the system. I downloaded the entire financial history and saved it to an external drive, just in case things got ugly later. They asked for 30 days. I was going to give it to them, but on my terms. On the third day, the notifications began. Martina tried to pay at her favorite restaurant, one of those ridiculously expensive places where they serve you named lettuce, and her card was declined. I knew because she sent me a screenshot followed by the message. "Was this you?" I didn't reply. That same night, Laura sent me an email. "Hey, I think there's a problem with the cards. Let me know." I replied, "Everything is working fine on my end. I assume Esteban is taking care of things." No response. Hours later, Martina posted on social media something like, "Some people show you who they really are when you stop giving them what they want." Instagram philosophy. I figured that salad must have been life-changing. But this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't a punishment. It was reciprocity. You decide to move in with your ex to help him overcome his grief. Fine. But don't expect me to keep filling the pantry while you play therapist in someone else's house. The rest of that week, I dedicated myself to cleaning, both physically and digitally. I packed up many of the things Laura left behind. Creams, favorite mugs, blankets, everyday objects. Not out of spite, but for order. I labeled the boxes and stacked them in the garage. Out of sight. Martina's room remained untouched. Not out of nostalgia. I just didn't have the energy to deal with it yet. But I did turn off the lights she left on and unplugged the straightener in the bathroom. Electricity isn't free. By the end of that week, the house felt different. Lighter, as if it too were shedding a weight. It was then that I realized I was the one holding everything up. Not just financially, but emotionally, mentally. I was the support beam for two people who didn't even notice the effort it took to keep the roof steady. Laura always said I was too practical, that I needed to live in the moment. Life's little ironies. I only started doing that when she left. That weekend, I finally told someone, my sister Diana. We're not extremely close, but she's trustworthy, no drama, direct. She lives an hour away. We usually talk once a week, mostly to check on mom or vent about work. This time I called her early on a Sunday. She answered saying, "You never call this early. What happened?" I told her. Laura went to live with her ex for 30 days. There was a silence, followed by a what? I told her the essentials. What Laura said, Martina's little speech, the story about finding closure. Diana didn't interrupt. She let me speak. When I finished, she just said, "And you're going to allow that?" I replied, "I'm not stopping her, but I'm not going to keep paying for her stay either." Another pause, then she said, "Good. Don't." No shouting, no scandal, just serene, firm, honest support. She added, "If you need to come stay for a few days, I have room." I thanked her but told her I was fine. And I was. For once, the silence in the house wasn't the enemy. On the contrary, it was the first time in a long time I could think clearly. After hanging up, I felt something like relief. Not because someone had taken my side, but because someone had finally seen what was happening with clarity and hadn't tried to disguise it with empty phrases. Diana didn't tell me I had to fix it. She told me to take care of myself. By the 7th day, I had a routine. I was sleeping better, eating better, feeling lighter. What surprised me most was how quickly the house adapted. There were no more extra shoes by the door. By the second week, the atmosphere had grown quieter, but not that peaceful kind of quiet. It was the silence you feel just before a storm, when everything is too still and something inside you knows something big is coming. I wasn't wrong. It was Martina who broke the silence first. I was in the garage, reorganizing a shelf that had been leaning for months, when my phone started vibrating nonstop. 2 back-to-back calls from her, then a voicemail, then a text. "We need to talk. Now." That kind of message never bodes well, especially from someone who, 2 weeks earlier, had accused me of financial manipulation just for canceling her Spotify account. I ignored the message for a bit. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and sat down. 5 minutes later, she called again. This time, I answered. "No hello, no how are you?" She went straight to the point. "Was it you who canceled my access to the university portal? I can't get into my account." I replied, "I didn't cancel the portal. What I did was close the card that was linked to it. If that was the one paying for your extras, Then yes, you'll have to take care of it yourself. You can't do this to me, she said, raising her voice. This affects my education. And who has funded that education until now? Tuition, books, rent, food. I've paid for it all. But you were right there when your mother told me she was leaving to be with her ex, and you supported her as if it were something admirable. So if you consider yourself an adult, act like one. Silence. Then she hung up. That was the first crack, and it didn't take long for Laura to follow. The next morning, I received an email from her. Subject: we need to talk. No greeting, no apology, just this. I feel like this has gone too far. You've made your point. I think we should sit down and talk when I get back and see how we can restart everything. Restart. As if this were a bad TV show, not a marriage abandoned for a 30-day spiritual retreat with her ex. I didn't reply. I marked the email as unread, just in case. I never opened it again. The next day, Diana called again. I haven't heard from you since our first chat. I saw Martina's post, she said. Something about you abandoning her? I sighed. All because she can't get into the university gym anymore. That's the big crisis. Diana let out a dry laugh that I appreciated. Look, I always thought Laura was a sensible woman, but lately it seems like she left her common sense somewhere. It's like she justifies everything now just for the sake of feeling needed by someone. And Esteban gave her the perfect excuse. She was right. I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it. This wasn't about healing. It was about control. Laura wanted to continue feeling indispensable to someone, and sometimes people will justify anything if they can wrap it in empathy. Over the next few days, I reviewed our finances more carefully. I made some adjustments. I removed Martina as a secondary user on a credit card. Not out of spite, but for order. I didn't want any more messages saying she couldn't buy her chai latte with oat milk. Shortly after, one of Martina's friends, one of those who used to come over a lot, sent me a direct message. It was brief. I just wanted to say that I think what they're doing to you is really unfair. I hope you're okay. That message hit me harder than all of Martina's outbursts combined, because someone external, who owed me nothing, could see with clarity what others who lived under my roof and ate from my table refused to acknowledge. Finally, on day 13, Laura called. I didn't answer. She didn't leave a message. Instead, later, she sent another email. We should talk about how this is affecting Martina. She's having a hard time. We get your point. Can we be civilized now? Civilized. How easy it is to use that word after you leave to take care of your ex. I didn't reply. Instead, I called my lawyer and asked how we could separate assets without yet initiating a formal process. I just wanted to be prepared, to have options. He explained a few things I hadn't considered. Issues with the house, long-term accounts, even insurance policies where Martina was listed as a secondary beneficiary. I took notes on everything. I wasn't looking to start a war. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't left holding the detonator if things blew up. As the days passed, I ignored the messages. The more I maintained my silence, the more insistent they became. Because that's what silence does. It destabilizes those who are used to getting immediate answers. It wasn't concern for me. It was anxiety about what that silence implied for them. On day 29, I made a single call. I didn't write or give any warning. I called the same courier I used for work contracts and asked him to deliver an envelope to Esteban's house. Would you like to include a note? He asked. Yes, I said. Inside the envelope were the divorce papers. Direct, no drama, just the facts and a date. No insults, no reproaches. At the beginning, I added a single line. You chose the distance. I chose the clarity. Consider this your confirmation email. At noon, I received delivery confirmation. 15 minutes later, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls, messages. What is this? You're exaggerating. This wasn't supposed to be final. You're going to divorce me over a 30-day favor? Laura immediately adopted the victim role. Then came Martina. Are you really punishing her for helping someone? You're destroying everything out of pride. Typical. When you deny them access to your peace, they call it selfishness. I didn't respond, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had already said everything with 30 days of silence. At 6 p.m., I turned off my phone. I slept like I hadn't in years. The next day, they returned as if nothing had happened. I was watching a game in the living room when I heard the garage door open. I didn't even pause the TV. Laura walked in, as if she were returning from a weekend retreat. Martina followed, dragging a suitcase and already checking her phone, asking what needed to be bought for the house. Laura looked around and said, "Well, we're home." As if that should excite me. I didn't get up, just nodded. I noticed. She waited for more, but I wasn't going to give her anything. Martina walked over to the dining table where my papers and laptop were spread out and said, "Can you move your stuff? I need to set up." Then I stood up, firmly, without raising my voice. "No, that's not going to happen." Laura frowned as if I'd just told her the sky was orange. "Excuse me? You can't just come back here like this is a sitcom that resets with the next episode. You made decisions. So did I." Martina dropped her backpack on the floor, crossing her arms. "This was our home. Today, it's where I live. If you want to come in, you start at the front door." Laura looked at me as if I'd slapped her. "We were only gone for a month," she said, visibly offended. "We didn't cheat on you. We didn't make a mess. I was helping someone who lost his wife. Why are you being so dramatic?" "No, irrappliably. You were helping your ex. You went to live with him. You cooked. You cleaned. You appeared in his photos smiling as if you were auditioning for a second round of your old life. And on top of that, you expected me to stay here waiting for you with warm towels." She didn't answer. Her silence was clearer than any words. I handed her the manila envelope I had prepared. Inside was everything I had canceled. Subscriptions, direct debits, accounts, a list of things she had assumed I would continue to cover. Laura held it as if it were burning her. Martina looked around, as if suddenly noticing that something had truly changed. "We can't even stay for tonight?" she asked. "You can sleep in the garage if you want," I said. "Your mother's boxes are there. Or you can go stay with your friends like you usually do." Laura's voice trembled. "You sent us divorce papers. That's insane." "What's insane," I said, "is leaving your husband to go play happy family with your ex and then getting angry because he's no longer waiting for you." Martina huffed and grabbed her bag again. "Wow, so toxic." I smiled. "Setting boundaries isn't toxic. You just don't like them when you're not the one in control." Laura lowered her voice, as if that would undo the last few weeks. "So, that's it? You're giving up? I gave you 30 days. You used them. Now I'm using mine." They stood there, motionless, as if still trying to solve a puzzle. But there was no puzzle, only decisions and consequences. In the end, Laura turned and left without any hugs or apologies. Martina followed, muttering something I didn't bother to understand. I stood there listening to the door close. Then I walked through the house, not because I was lost, but because I wanted to feel the space, the silence, the newness of it all. The house seemed bigger, not physically, but emotionally. There was more air, more freedom, more room to exist without someone pushing or pulling me. I went through the kitchen, looked at the cabinet with the mugs, the one Laura filled with her Empowered Girl cups. It was half empty now, and I liked it that way. I went into the bedroom, laid down on the bed, and stared at the ceiling fan. It was off. The remote was still on her side. I didn't touch it. I closed my eyes and understood something unexpected. I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I was at peace. It was over. The day of the hearing was the complete opposite of what Laura might have imagined. No audience, no dramatic reactions, no epic music, just a cold hallway, worn-out carpet, and a couple of lawyers with folders, like any other Tuesday. Laura arrived well-dressed but visibly tense, curly hair, full makeup, and the necklace I gave her 2 Christmases ago, the one she said made her feel elegant. Martina didn't accompany her, which surprised no one. They always talked a big game at home, but in reality, they fell silent. Laura barely looked at me as she entered, just gave a tight-lipped nod and sat on her side of the room, as if we were strangers waiting for the dentist. My lawyer leaned towards me. "She's nervous." "She should be," I replied. Laura had filed a formal response to the divorce. Nothing special. Some vague phrases about misunderstandings and how she never intended the separation to be final. Legal jargon written when everything was already falling apart. But that didn't matter anymore. What counted was what was in writing, and I had everything backed up, printed, and in order. When the judge entered, he wasted no time. "We are here for preliminary hearings on the division of marital assets and temporary maintenance," he said without enthusiasm. And honestly, I was grateful. I wasn't looking for drama. I just wanted peace and signed documents. Laura's lawyer spoke first, just as I imagined. "Your Honor, the 30-day period was not an abandonment. It was a compassionate gesture, a show of support for a person in mourning. Our client was responding to the pain of a lifelong friend. It was not a flight from the marriage." He literally used the phrase, "mourning someone else's grief," as if Laura were a saint and not someone who packed her bags to go live with her ex while still wearing her wedding ring. I remained serious. Then my lawyer spoke. He walked up to the judge, without raising his voice, and placed a folder on the bench. Inside were the following documents. 1. The email I sent Laura the night she announced she was leaving, detailing the 30-day voluntary separation and specifying she would be financially independent and all joint expenses would be paused. 2. Her reply, a single word, confirmed, with a date and time stamp. 3. Screenshots from our shared cloud. Photos of Laura cooking at Esteban's house, sitting next to him on the porch swing, a selfie with the caption, "Good energy and healing company." It wasn't scandalous, but it was intimate enough to destroy her narrative of temporary compassion. 4. A detailed log of account cancellations, password changes, and digital unlinking. All documented and dated. No emotions, just facts. The judge skimmed each page in silence. He didn't ask a single question, as if he'd seen this story many times before. Laura looked down as if she feared the folder would burst into flames. Her lawyer tried to recover. "We are not questioning the end of the marriage, Your Honor. We are simply asking the court to consider temporary financial support and shared access to lifestyle assets due to the length of the marriage." My lawyer didn't hesitate. She left the home of her own volition. She signed off on it, acknowledged it, and accepted the financial separation. My client simply followed the procedure. There is no confusion, only a misplaced sense of entitlement after regrets set in. The judge looked up for the first time. "Mrs. Sanchez, how long were you absent?" Laura cleared her throat. 30 days. "Living with your ex-partner," he nodded. "Yes, but it wasn't romantic." The judge raised an eyebrow. "That is not relevant." "What is relevant," he said, tapping the folder with a finger, "is that it is documented here that you left voluntarily, acknowledging you were acting on your own account and understood the consequences." He turned to my lawyer. "All documentation is in order. There are no signs of abuse, coercion, or improper conduct." And finally, addressing them both, "The request for spousal support is denied. The division of assets will follow the standard agreement. No retroactive claims for voluntary abandonment will be considered." Laura looked like she had swallowed rocks. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. She just adopted that frozen expression of someone caught between rage and comprehension. Her lawyer touched her arm and whispered something, but she didn't move. The judge continued. "As for the property, it remains under Mr. Sanchez's name. According to the title records, there is no dispute." Laura's lawyer tried one last resort. "And what about their daughter? She is 19, but still partially dependent." The judge didn't even look up. "She is an adult. This is not a custody hearing." And just like that, the matter was settled. Laura didn't say a single word on her way out of the courtroom. She looked smaller, not in a physical sense, but like someone who had gambled on a version of reality that never came to be. Outside, I sat on a bench to wait for my ride. I had already canceled the shared car service we used to use together, and I wasn't about to pay for her trip back to her sister's house. After a little while, she approached and sat on the other end of the bench, leaving at least 2 feet between us. After a long silence, she said, "You didn't even try to fix this." I looked at her. "You moved in with another man and expected me to leave the door open." She shook her head, more confused than angry. "So you just turned everything off." "I didn't turn anything off," I replied. "I just realized I was the only one still on." She didn't respond. She sat there for another minute, as if still processing it. Finally, her sister's car arrived. Laura stood up without a word and left. I remained seated. The sun wasn't shining any brighter that day, but it felt cleaner, as if it were finally illuminating the correct version of my life. I sent a message to Diana on the way back. I told her it was all over. Her reply was simple. Finally. Later, I received an email from my lawyer. The subject line read, "Final version, clean break." That night, I grilled a steak just for myself. I ate it in silence, accompanied only by tranquility. And honestly, that felt like the real victory. Exactly 9 days after the judgment, Laura reappeared, unannounced. On a Tuesday afternoon, she knocked on the door. I opened it, and there she was, attitude on full display, arms crossed, as if I owed her an explanation. "You changed the locks." Not even a greeting, just entitlement disguised as formality. I leaned against the doorframe. "You don't live here anymore." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might pop out. "Is this how you're going to act? I gave you space, and this is what I find." "You didn't give me space," I said. "You gave my space to your ex." She ignored that. "I need to get some things. I left important things behind." I shrugged. "I packed them. They're in the garage. You can get them, but that's it." Laura took a step forward as if to force her way in. "I'm not doing this out here. You're not doing it inside either." She looked disoriented, as if the reality that this was no longer her house was just now sinking in, as if the judge's ruling didn't matter because, in her mind, we were still just on a break. She scoffed. "So this is what you've become. Cold, resentful, throwing your wife out like a stranger." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "And strangers don't usually treat me like I'm disposable." Laura huffed. "You think this makes you a better person?" I tilted my head. "I'm not trying to be better. I'm just trying to be left in peace." She hugged herself, her posture even more tense. "I gave you time. I gave you space. I thought you would calm down." "You were wrong," I replied. She glanced toward the car. "Martina is in the car. That makes 2 people who don't live here anymore." She glared at me. "Do you really not care? After all these years?" "You didn't give me years," I responded. "We shared time. Then you gave your time to someone else, as if I were eternal." "I'm not." She didn't like that answer. She started pacing on the porch, as if rehearsing a speech. "Do you know what it feels like to not be seen? To live with someone who doesn't listen?" I nodded. "You're describing the last 3 years of our marriage." She clenched her jaw. I knew she was losing control of the script. She started to say something, but didn't finish the sentence. I waited. She said nothing more. "You thought I'd be here," I said, "with the porch light on, waiting for you to come back." "I thought you would understand," she mumbled. "And I did understand," I answered. "That's why I filed the papers." Laura opened her mouth again, but stopped. She looked towards the garage. "Fine, I'll get my things." And without another word, she walked down the steps. From the window, I watched her open the trunk of the car and start loading boxes without even checking them. Martina never got out. Laura slammed the trunk shut and got into the passenger seat. They sat there for another minute. Then they drove off. I stood there, watching the empty street. Then I locked the door. Not out of habit. This time was different. It felt like closing a chapter, not the kind they suggest in therapy, but the kind that manifests in real life. When you realize that peace isn't something you're given, it's something you choose. Later, I checked my emails. There was one from Martina. No subject line, just reproach. "You let mom fall apart, and you did nothing. You could have fixed it, but you'd rather be right than keep your family." Not a word about her supporting her mother's decision to leave with another man. Nothing about all the bills I paid while they accused me of being controlling. Zero accountability. I didn't reply. Because when someone sees you as the technician who's supposed to fix their mistakes, not as a person, they don't deserve a response. They want to keep telling their version of the story. I changed the channel.